Yes, I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. I'm Batman, Alfred.
I'm Batman.
I am Batman!
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
Greetings, Bat family. Welcome back to Holy BatCast, brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. Please visit our website, holybatcast.com. It's where you're going to find episodes of this show, as well as videos, links, merch, everything you need to know. Go to holybatcast.com. But don't worry, we are also all over the social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You just search for Holy BatCast. You'll find us. We are the only one. We are also on Patreon. So if you are a fan of the show and would like to help support the show in a more official way, become a more official part of the Bat family, you can go to patreon.com/holybatcast. Huge thank you to all our patrons who do help us out, keep the show rolling. We couldn't do it without you. And we're getting some new prizes. We just got some buttons, which is super exciting. It's like we realize we just got to do a little bit at a time. The more we do to have fun things for you guys. So Holy BatCast buttons have arrived. And there's more coming where that came from. So keep an eye on that space. And again, go to patreon.com/holybatcast. We are also part of the Real Fans Podcast Network, so if you can't get enough of these shows, we do a bunch of them. Keeps you busy, keeps you occupied when you should be working. We're not here to judge. Please listen to us when you should be working. We don't mind. All those different shows are at rf4rm.com. So there is Real Fans for Real Movies, the original show, the one that started it all, where we look at movies past and present. Most recently, we looked at Ready Player One, which is kind of sort of almost a Batman movie, maybe a little bit. But if you want to hear us talk about that, Real Fans for Real Movies. We've also got Disorder, every Disney film, where we're looking at every Disney animated feature in order. The most recent episode of that was about The Jungle Book. So if you like that show, check out Disorder. And then there is Please Rewind, the RF for RM retro show, where Tim, Jamie, and Guy are looking at movies from the past as they feel like it. And I know that they just recorded Dazed and Confused. So keep an eye out for that one. You can check out all those at rf4rm.com or just search for them by name wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, I am your host, Andy DiGenova. Thank you for spending your time listening to me talk. If you want to see me tweet or post photos, you can do that on Twitter or on Instagram just by searching my name, Andy DiGenova, ANDYDIGENOVA. Now, this episode of Holy BatCast, we are going to continue a theme that we started last week. We just decided to keep going with it, and we're going to look at some more Mr. Freeze. We're going to check out the first two episodes that are part of the Mr. Freeze saga from Batman the Animated Series. So that includes Heart of Ice and Deep Freeze. They were on the Blu-ray for Batman and Mr. Freeze SubZero, and we're like, hey, let's take advantage of them being on the Blu-ray and look at them closer, since we're already in a Mr. Freeze state of mind. Joining me to talk about that is I got nothing. Got nothing this time. I'm sorry. It's my partner in crime, my podcasting brother, Mr. Jamie Drewley. Hey, Jamie.
I don't need a good introduction for this episode. I'm just delighted we're not talking about Batman and Robin again.
Well, there you go. I mean, you take the wins where you can, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, last week you were a polar bear, and so I was like, oh God, I got nothing this week. I don't know. I couldn't even come up with the name of that guy who screws over Mr. Freeze and Heart of Ice. So
this week I'm a really lazy SOB that still had the SubZero Blu-ray in my Blu-ray player, and I thought we should just keep going with this so I don't have to get up anymore.
It's sometimes it's about finding the efficiencies where we can. We're busy people. We got to do what we got to do. We do too many of these shows, and so it was convenient. It was right there. It was already in the Blu-ray player, as you say, so we might as well. And unfortunately, Brendan couldn't join us for this episode, which is a shame. He's recovering. He is suffering from a head injury. He was struck by an errant boomerang. So, just as always, our thoughts and prayers go out to Brendan and his family at this time.
He's on the mend, though. I understand that he is currently stocking cardboard cutouts of very young girls at the Gold Coast Games, where he's at currently.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I bet Jess is psyched.
I did like his response to that. Somebody asked him if his wife was aware of this picture that he took that was a little suspect, and he said, "What happens at these games stays at these games." So,
Well, not if you post them. But I guess if your competition is cardboard, you can't be too sad.
that's a fact.
Anyway, so it's just the two of us. Back again. And yeah, we had fun talking about Batman and Mr. Freeze SubZero last week, and we talked about one of the great things about the Blu-ray was that it included the entire, as they called it, Mr. Freeze saga. So it included 2 episodes from Batman the Animated Series that preceded SubZero, and then 2 more episodes that came after SubZero from the New Batman Adventures and Batman Beyond. So we decided, let's take the first chunk and review those first 2 episodes, the prequels to SubZero, if you will. And then when we're feeling lazy again, we'll do the other 2. And eventually we'll have the entire Mr. Freeze saga here for your listening pleasure.
Okay, I'm just going to leave the disc in the player until I get notified otherwise.
I mean, we can just do it next week if people like this, or if some random big thing hits, it'll be there on deck for when we're like, we don't know what to talk about this week.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it was great talking about Batman and Mr. Freeze SubZero, and so let's keep it going. Let's keep talking Mr. Freeze. So without further ado, it is time to take a closer look at part 1 of the Mr. Freeze saga, which includes the episodes Heart of Ice and Deep Freeze. We are going to start with Heart of Ice, one of the most acclaimed episodes of Batman the Animated Series ever. I think it won the #1 spot in our Batman the Animated Series 25th anniversary celebration episode. If I'm remembering.
That is the case, yes.
If I remember correctly, I think it took the top spot. And so we did talk about it a little bit there, but we talked about it pretty high level. We didn't really get into detail because we had just gotten done talking about a bunch of episodes high level. And so, yeah, we talked about it, but we didn't dive too deep. And so I know that maybe some of this feels a little bit like a retread, but I feel like we should focus on it specifically, and then we can talk about Deep Freeze, which I'll be honest, I don't know if I have seen that since it aired. I have very little recollection of this one.
I don't believe I'd ever seen it until I watched it today. So,
well, there you go. So something old, something new. Something borrowed, which would be the Blu-ray, which I borrowed from Warner Brothers, and something blue, which would be Mr. Freeze's skin.
That's strangely put together, but yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, and I mean, we're just preparing for the wedding of Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle in the comics.
Oh, no. Shut that down right now. We can't open that door.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit of Mr. Freeze and start with SubZero. Or no, not SubZero. We talked SubZero. Heart of Ice. That's what I meant. So Heart of Ice was one of the very first episodes of Batman the Animated Series. It is episode number 14 in production order. This one aired in September of 1992, and it changed the character of Mr. Freeze forever. So if you all remember, this was our introduction to the character of Mr. Freeze in the animated universe, and they completely redefined who this character was and what his motivations were. So this is Batman's first meeting with Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze has been breaking into different GothCorp places and stealing large equipment. And Batman is on his trail trying to figure out what these robberies are amounting to. And Batman, being the detective that he is, he sees that taken separately, these big pieces of equipment mean nothing. But put them together, and they create a big old freeze gun that you can cause lots of trouble with. And so Batman is on the trail of Mr. Freeze. While he is on that trail, he starts learning the backstory of Mr. Freeze and how Victor Freeze was a scientist working for GothCorp, and he had done cryogenic research to save the life of his wife, save his wife's life, and put her in cryogenic freeze while they search for a cure for what ails her. I don't think they name it. I don't think they say what it is. We learn in Batman and Robin it's McGregor syndrome, which is definitely a real thing. But in here, I think it's pretty vague.
I think McGregor syndrome comes from farming too much, doesn't it?
Maybe Mr. McGregor's. Is that what it is? Mr. McGregor's garden?
I'm sorry. I've spent way too much time with Tim Rooney lately. Forgive me.
Oh, you need to be careful with that, because the puns will seep in like a poison and kill everything that you are. You don't want to do it.
No.
But anyway, so we find out that the head of GothCorp, who is Ferris Boyle. See, now I have it right in front of me. Ferris Boyle is he found that Victor had used company resources to do this. He shuts it down, kills Nora in the process, throws Victor Fries into this vat of chemicals, which then of course make him the man he's going to become. He can only survive in sub-zero temperatures, and it all comes to a head in a big gala, as always, where Mr. Freeze is there after Ferris Boyle. Batman intervenes and of course defeats Mr. Freeze for the moment. So, Heart of Ice, overall thoughts and impressions of this classic episode, Jamie. On the last one, you were saying, oh, you like it, but you're not like the biggest fan.
It's a really good episode. I don't mean to discredit this because I know it has the huge following that it does. I mean, so many people had this down for their number one episode for the animated series. And I understand why. For me, it doesn't quite resonate as much. There are certainly points to the episode that I love. Again, as I pointed out with the Sub-Zero discussion, I love Frieza's motivations because it's something I can relate to. If my wife or my kids or any of my family loved ones were in a predicament that she was, I would do whatever it took to make sure that their safety was maintained or that they were cured from whatever ailed them or anything along those lines. So these are motivations that I can be sympathetic to and I can completely understand. So I like that is where they went with the character. And I like even more that seems to be where they've kept with the character since this episode came along. As you said, it essentially morphed the character forever and for the better as far as I'm concerned. So that part of it I do truly love. For whatever reason, I had it in my mind that this was a 2-part episode, and it's not. So, I mean, you're cramming quite a bit of stuff, as usual, as we so often say. There's so much stuff to be had here in 22 minutes, and a fine job was done with it. I really think it was. There's the emotional strikes with showing the origin of what happened as he became Mr. Freeze were strong. If even a little bit. I don't want to say rushed because I don't feel like it was rushed, but it's not a tremendous amount of detail. It's just they give you just enough of the exposition by showing you the videotape that Batman is watching that you understand everything that happened and what led to where they're at now. And I think it's brilliant that it was done in such a quick manner, but so effective in that way. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Which they did lift for Batman and Robin. I mean, done worse, but they essentially lifted that same moment where they picked up the old surveillance camera from Victor Freeze's accident and were able to tell you his origin in a matter of a minute or two. It's just done better here. But one thing that I remember, or I guess one thing that surprised me about this episode is because we're looking at it through hindsight, and we know where the story goes, and especially since we just revisited Sub-Zero, I was like, I forgot that in the context of this episode, everyone believes that Nora Freeze is dead.
Yeah, see, I thought that resolution came at the end. I don't know why I had it in my brain that revelation came to him while he was sitting at Arkham. That's how I remembered it, and that's clearly not how it went down. But I thought he was sitting in there and somebody informed him, either Batman or one of the doctors at Arkham had said, hey, your wife is alive and she's stable and she's okay, but, she's still in the cryogenic state. I had it in my mind that that's how this episode ended so that he had some measure of hope at the end. But that's not at all what happened. So, I mean, that was even a little bit more heartbreaking from that character's perspective anyway.
Right. I mean, and that's kind of what happens in Batman and Robin is he thinks she's dead and Batman goes, no, we got to her in time. She's still alive.
That's probably where I had it backwards. And you mentioned it and now I'm kind of wondering, and this will be one of those what ifs you could discuss until the end of days. If Freeze had been played as a straight character in Batman and Robin, how much different could that movie have been?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know Schwarzenegger is capable of playing cold and emotionless. He pretty much did it in every movie.
He kind of built his career on it.
So,
right.
yeah. I mean, it's...
Why could he do it for every other role except for the one that demanded it?
I don't know. So I guess that's one for us as fans to think about. If Freeze would have been, the straight man, if it were in Batman and Robin, and, even if everything else around him was played up as a, more of a jokey, lighter tone, if he would have maintained that character position, I don't know. I think we might have had something better than what we got anyway.
No, I've always thought that. And I've thought that about Two-Face and Batman Forever, and I've thought that about Mr. Freeze and Batman and Robin, is if those actors had chosen to play the character straight and serious, it would have gone a huge long way of elevating those movies, even with all the other gack and nonsense around them. But if they had played the character not as a cartoon in both cases, I feel like it would have gone a long way in improving those movies. Because I remember being surprised how that Batman and Robin did take the updated backstory for Mr. Freeze for the movie. I remember being surprised by it and actually kind of impressed with that. But then they completely undercut any kind of pathos it might have earned them with endless puns. Tim Rooney. So yeah, I've definitely thought that. So, but in the context of this one, it's funny, this episode, again, it is, I know why you would have thought it was a two-parter, because there's a lot of ground covered in a very short episode. And I think part of that is because our entry point as the audience is at the end of his crime spree. A lot of it, we come in on, I think, his second to last heist, and they tell us that this is yet another in a string of heists. So they very smartly get past all of that to get us to the big climax. But even so, you've got Batman learning who Mr. Freeze is. You've got him learning what his deal is. You have Mr. Freeze on this quest for vengeance. You've got to learn about GothCorp and this new character whose name I just forgot again because he's such a great character. For Ferris Boyle.
Wasn't he voiced by Mark Hamill?
He was, yeah. Which is something I remembered, but I wasn't sure if I was remembering correctly, because I always get Ferris Boyle mixed up with the jerk CEO from the first Riddler episode. And I couldn't remember which one was Mark Hamill. I just knew one of them was. And it is this one. It's Ferris Boyle. Yeah, so he was Mark Hamill. And if you go back and you listen to like Fat Man on Batman when Mark Hamill was on, which, Mark, we're still waiting for your call here at Holy BatCast. Give us a jingle. You've got time now that Luke Skywalker is dead. Anyway, but he talked about how he read for this and they brought him in for this, and that was before he knew he was going to play the Joker. And it was only because he was already in touch with them because of this other small role that he ended up auditioning for the Joker when Tim Curry wasn't working out.
These are things I forget, so I'm glad you're around for this.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But yes, Mark Hamill plays Ferris Boyle, so at least we got a great actor playing this character. But anyway, it's just there are a lot of moving parts to the story that they managed to do, and the very best episodes of the show are able to tell that much story in 22 minutes. But this is a Paul Dini episode directed by Bruce Timm, so you literally got your dynamic duo from Batman the Animated Series partnered up bringing you this episode, and it shows. Like, this is one that's just firing on all cylinders, and there's a reason it became critically acclaimed and it won them an Emmy. This episode won the Emmy for best writing in an animated series, something like that. So yeah, it's a lot going on here, and this is one, even revisiting it today, this is one that I've seen a million times. I remember when it first came out. I remember watching it back in 1992 and loving it then. I remember being excited. Oh, good, I'm going to get to see Mr. Freeze, because like we talked about in the last episode, I already liked the idea of Mr. Freeze just because I liked the idea of an ice villain. And then I remember watching the episode and thinking it was great. So it's one that I've revisited numerous times over the years. And so even watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, like this one I just feel like I know by heart, which is in direct contrast to the one that comes next, where I'm like, I think I've seen this one probably at some point, but it's all real fuzzy. But yeah, so again, I had forgotten that this episode was not about saving Nora. It was about getting revenge because Nora was quote unquote dead.
Yeah. I apparently have this and Batman and Robin crossed over, and my sincere apologies to the fans of Heart of Ice, because that should not be the case. But I think I saw it once years ago, like when the show was running in syndication. I don't believe I saw it when it first aired, because I missed so many of the episodes on first run. And then I saw it when we were doing the tournament for the best episodes of the show last year for the 25th anniversary. Mm-hmm. And then I saw it today. So I think I've only seen this episode 3 times. So I'm not as I like the episode. Again, I'm not, it's not a statement of the quality of the episode. I haven't watched it that much. I just have not watched this one very much. And I'm just not as familiar with it as so many of the other fans of the show seem to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's another thing, is as I was watching it, there were so many lines of dialogue that to me were just iconic. Like when Mr. Freeze says, it would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed. I was like, oh God, like that's such a classic Mr. Freeze line. And almost every line of dialogue that Mr. Freeze gives in this episode, I was like, oh yeah, that's classic. That's so classic. That's so Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, he's not a chatty Cathy villain. So I mean, what he says carries weight, and the delivery is it. The voice actor's name is Michael Ansari. Is that it?
Ansara, yeah.
Ansara. Okay, sorry. He delivers it so well. I mean, it seems weird that he's being so cold and almost monotone and emotionless about it. But I mean, it's such an impact the way he does it. He doesn't have to say a lot for it to have impact and meaning.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, I remember I think it might have been Paul Dini talking about it on Fat Man on Batman, when he said something about like they just kept telling Michael and Sarah to do less emotion, less emotion, less emotion. And like as an actor, that's completely in contrast to what you were trying to do and used to doing. And so it was really uncomfortable to just keep trying to suck all the emotion out of a performance. Who is he? George Lucas? But like, because of the character, it works so beautifully, because the less emotion that is in his line readings, the more underlying emotion there is, if that makes sense. Like it's weird, is it communicates so much more passion and tragedy by him being completely cold and monotone.
Right, because otherwise, if he gives too much emotion, you run the risk of him being like a whiny villain, or he gets to be over the top in some cases with the anger. I mean, it was a perfect choice by either the actor or the director, however it really panned out, to get the finished product that was delivered. Because I think it is extremely effective and very well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and it's, I think one of the best performances in this show is his Mr. Freeze. That voice is just perfection for the character.
I'll co-sign that all day.
And this one has like just the right amount of icy lines of dialogues without getting too over the top. So it shows that you can do it. You just got to know when to stop.
Yeah, restraint's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, because he says something about like, a dish best served cold and the icy hand of vengeance. Like he still does that. It's just done in just the right way where you buy it.
And he's not doing it with the wink wink nudge nudge that we got out of Batman and Robin is a big, well, that and the fact that the sheer amount that we got in comparison between the two also. But
exactly. Like here, he was allowed to have lines that weren't attempted jokes. So yeah, one of the moments that I number one, I love the animation of the freeze effects and the ice and everything. I think that the animation is done so beautifully. We talked a little bit about in SubZero about I think this design for Mr. Freeze is just perfect.
The sound effect for the ice gun is something I do want to call out, because I do love the sound that the gun makes as he fires it. I think that's a really cool sound effect.
Oh, absolutely. Like it sounds great and it looks great. The effect of that ice just looks awesome. But one of the moments that I always remember is in that the episode kicks off with that heist and Batman, trying to foil it, and he ends up frozen, but then one of Freeze's own henchmen gets frozen from, like, his legs get frozen, and the way Mr. Freeze is just like, leave him. It's his own fault. So cold, as it should be, but I love it. And then Batman saves him and puts him in the tank from Empire Strikes Back.
Exactly. The back of the tank. Yes.
So
I get why this was done, because in the context of the episode and the way it was written, it works out well because, they're able to show, Batman's compassion even in helping this guy out, because he had a chance to continue pursuing Freeze in that truck, but he opted to stay back there and, save the guy's legs, if not his life, from, hypothermia or whatever could have happened to him at that point. Batman chose to remain there and help that guy out instead of continuing his pursuit. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good character moment for Batman there. But also, on the flip side of it, logically speaking, how difficult is it to pick this guy up and throw him in the truck and take him with you as you're leaving? Because even if Freeze doesn't give a damn about this guy, not surviving or being legless or any of that other stuff, he might be able to provide the authorities with some information that could be detrimental to his plan. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even if he either shoots, I know this is the animated series, so he's not going to shoot the guy between the eyes or, kill him right there where we can see it in plain sight. But, pick him up and throw him in the truck and take him with you and make it more difficult for the Batman and the cops, Mm-hmm. So just a tiny little bit of a logic flaw. But like I say, I think it plays out well enough that I can overlook that.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if maybe they were like, maybe if Mr. Freeze, I think that he either wanted to get moving right then and there and didn't want to wait, or he thought the guy was going to die anyway.
That could be. We'll go with that. We'll go with yours. It sounds much less critical than mine. We'll go with that.
The other nice little layer on this is the fact that Gotham is going through a heat wave. And that was something where I think when we reviewed Batman and Robin, where I was like, I swore that, like, the setup was that it was the middle of the summer and it was super hot in Gotham, and I think it was Brendan who was like, no, that's Heart of Ice. I'm like, oh, okay, damn it. So I had the same issue, but in this one, because of his run-in with Mr. Freeze, Batman gets a cold. And you don't often see Batman having to suffer from a cold like the rest of us normal human beings. But again, that's just a super fun thematic element of he's battling Mr. Freeze, and at the same time he's battling a cold.
Yeah.
Which then, of course, all results into how he ends up taking down Mr. Freeze.
Now, see, that's the one thing I always have remembered is the chicken soup bit.
The chicken soup.
Yeah.
The only way to fight a cold.
Alfred gave him the setup. I mean, he paid it off himself, but Alfred's the one that set it up for him. So
he did. And I will say that, like, way back in 1992, that was my least favorite part about this episode, was the fact that Mr. Freeze was defeated by chicken soup. I thought it was just a little silly. Now, over the years, I'm used to it, and I think it's kind of clever about how that is how you defeat a cold. Right. So I've found my peace with it. But I do remember back then, being probably 13, 14 years old, being like, oh, really? I just wanted Batman to punch him in the face. I don't think we needed a thermos of chicken soup. But now I kind of appreciate it for what they were going for.
And I need to get one of those billionaire thermoses, because I'm telling you what, that soup staying that hot for that long is incredible.
I know, right? True.
I use a thermos. If I don't eat that stuff within about 2 to 3 hours, it's room temperature.
Well, it's a bat thermos.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying I need one of them high-tech deals. Get Lucius Fox on the phone. Tell him I need a thermostat.
It's really nice. I actually got a bat thermos in my Easter basket this year.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Does it keep chicken soup hot for 2 days?
Well, that's what I'm going to find out. That's my. I'm going to fill it with chicken soup, and I'm going to carry it around daily, because I never know when I might need to defeat an ice villain.
The other thing I always like to point out is the different ways that the Rogues Gallery get to be made threats to Batman, because so few of them pose the threat of the mental challenge and the physical challenge both. And Freeze never really strikes you. I mean, obviously he provides the physical challenge of you're dodging the ice, and he has these different ways that he uses it, be it freezing your limbs or your body or freezing the floor so you can't get any traction to run, or, you have various clever ways that you can use his powers in that sense. But the fact that they decided to take his armor or his suit and make it increase his strength and make it harder for, strikes to affect him. Because, you said you wanted him to punch him in the face. He can't really punch him in the face because he's got that big fishbowl on his head. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's enough padding or armor or whatever it is there that, punches and kicks just don't have the effect on him that they would, say, a Riddler or a Joker or something like that. And I enjoyed that because it presents more of a challenge for Batman to have to come up with something like a thermos of chicken soup to take this guy down,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And because it just makes sense that because he's got this super high-tech suit that is built to keep him alive and keep him cold, that this suit would also make him stronger. And so when he says that, you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it does just make the challenge that much greater for Batman. I
do like how he says it increases his strength by 3 times. Mm-hmm. I mean, I did catch that. Mm-hmm. And this is nitpicky as hell. So, fast forward like 30 seconds if you don't want to hear me be nitpicky. But how many of you can take your arm straight out and lift 70 pounds straight up in the air? I can't do it. I know that. Because I'm figuring Batman must weigh right around the 220 mark, as I recall. 225, I think it is in Dark Knight Returns. So that's what I go with for his general size. So about a third of that would be roughly 70 pounds, a little over 70 pounds.
Ah.
So.
Well, Batman, he's got a cold.
He's 70 pounds like that.
He's got a cold. He hasn't been eating. He's dropped.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He's his sickly weight at this point.
You're really good at covering up these logic flaws. I like this.
Yeah, thanks.
We really should put you in charge of writing some of this stuff.
But yeah, no, I mean, fair enough. I will say prior to that moment, one of my favorite moments, and I think it's just such a great piece of animation, is when Mr. Freeze kicks over that fire hydrant and freezes the water flow and uses it to basically launch himself into the building. I just think that's great.
I laughed audibly at that. And not because I think it's silly, it's because I had a good time with how clever that was for him to do that.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I always love that when, you know what their powers are and now you can get creative with it. And I think that's a perfect example.
Right. I mean, he just he pulled an Iceman, but I thought it was really cool, the thought that somebody put into it to come up with that idea.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree. So yeah, I always dug that. That's another moment I always remembered. And so Batman does keep the videotape when he does his little undercover mission to get some more information from GothCorp as far as what happened to Victor Freeze. It's when he sees the video, he finds the file or whatever, and he keeps that videotape and he uses that to put Mark Hamill. Ferris Boyle. I can never remember. Ferris Boyle.
Boyle's Day Off.
Yeah, to break. Oh, there you go. Perfect. I like that.
Now you'll remember it.
Ferris Boyle's Day Off. But, he uses that to bring Ferris Boyle to justice. But at the same time, he also has to bring Mr. Freeze to justice. And you're right. Like, the whole time I kept waiting for him to find out that Nora was still alive, and then it never happens. But what it does give us is it gives us this really great ending to the episode, which is another one of my favorite moments. And we talked a little bit about it last episode on SubZero. SubZero has actually a pretty happy ending, a mostly happy ending for Mr. Freeze. And this one is a very tragic ending because not only did he not get his revenge, even though Boyle was brought to justice, Freeze was abducted. And as far as he knows, his wife is still dead. And so all he has are those memories. And, he gives this great little monologue, just basically asking her for forgiveness.
And apparently he did still have a tear to shed.
He did. And I always think that's another just thing that I love about Mr. Freeze is he is the coldest, most emotionless villain. And all that's hiding is he is actually the most emotional villain.
Exactly. I've really, the last week or two has really given me so much more appreciation for him as a character because of those motivations. As I keep talking about, characters are important to me. I mean, I like explosions and fighting and shooting and all that stuff as much as anybody does. I mean, maybe more so. But the one thing that continuously draws me into loving something generally is strong character work. And this is some outstanding character work, particularly for an animated show. And even for as good as this show generally is, I think he's still a standout in that department.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. I mean, I finally got you to warm up to Robin. Now I'm getting you to warm up to Mr. Freeze. Baby steps, Jamie. Getting you
water,
there. Man. But no, I mean, and I think that's why this episode won a freaking Emmy, is because it's a great adventure, it's a great story, but it completely redefined this character for a new generation. And aside from it being a great Batman adventure story, there's so much heart and emotion in this that it changed the way people thought about cartoons, because it was able to tell a story this emotional.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And that last shot of Victor Freeze in his cell, heartbroken with that tear, and then it cuts out to Batman just watching him. It's just this really great, powerful, beautiful moment.
I fully agree. And that snow globe leading right into the next episode, that pissed me off at the start of the other episode when they were breaking him out, because they broke that snow globe.
Mm-hmm. I know,
it seems strange that something as silly as, I mean, obviously not to him, it's not silly, but me as the viewer, something as simple as a snow globe can just literally get me angry that thing was broken, because again, I've gained that appreciation for that character now. I can see that if I had a snow globe of something that reminded me of my wife in that situation, and somebody took that memory, which is basically what it is an embodiment of a memory from me, and broke it, I'd be straight pissed. I'd break something on them, not one of their toys. I'd break something on them. But I have a hard time keeping that sort of thing in check.
Well, I feel like in great stories, great movies, great TV, whatever, objects can become characters. And I think that the Nora Freeze snow globe is a perfect example of that. It's an object that carries so much weight and has so much associated with it that it feels like an integral character to the story. And so you're right, when you see it shatter, you're like, oh, even though it's not a real snow globe, it's drawing on paper, but you go, oh my God. It's like that.
The other thing I wanted to ask, and I obviously you've seen this episode way more times than I have. Did it seem, and I normally don't watch it on disc, I watch it streaming through Amazon, because they've got all the Batman the Animated Series stuff on Amazon, and I'm lazy and it's convenient. I do have the DVDs, so don't at me, people. I do own them. I'm lazy. I don't want to come down to the basement and get them and go back up to my bedroom and watch it on my TV there.
Oh,
so
I feel
this I was watching here in my basement, which is not where I generally watch the animated series episodes. And on this Blu-ray, number one, usually his hands and feet look pink to me. Mr. Freeze's hands and feet look pink. In the Blu-ray, as I watched it here, and it could just be my color tuning is different on this TV than my other one, they seem more of like a lavender or almost like a purplish color.
Oh yeah, I've always seen them as purple.
Okay, because on my other TV they look pink, like baby flesh pink. It's anyway.
Interesting.
Like I say, probably the difference in color tuning. Plus the one down here in the basement is a 4K and the other one is not. The other thing I thought was that this episode looked especially dark, especially background and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was just me or, because I know they had the thing where they animated on, the sketch for the animation and stuff went on black paper. So obviously the show is generally pretty dark, but this one to me, for whatever reason, seemed exceptionally dark. And I don't know if that was purposeful or difference in my TVs or what it was.
I mean, it is pretty dark, but like in a bad way or a distracting way?
No, not bad at all. It seemed like there was almost less animation going on in certain scenes, and it just that blackness of the background stood out more.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe like I said, it could just be the difference in the TVs that I normally watch, in the format that I normally watch them.
Right. Could be. Well, cool. But no, I hear you. I hear in this case, I watched it on the Blu-ray, and even though it distinctly says in standard definition, like they don't want to lie to you, I still think it looked great. It just means they didn't remaster it, but I still think that it really looked nice from what I saw. So I was happy with that. I will also say something we talked about on the last episode is, this SubZero release is by Warner Archive. You said it, and I was like, I didn't know that because it wasn't labeled on the Blu-ray anywhere. But as I was just catching up on my comic book reading, there was an ad for it, and it was said, yeah, from Warner Archive. So my bad. So for people who are like, I can't find it in stores, yeah, you've got to order it online, just like Mask of the Phantasm.
And it's not cheap, but it's still worth it.
It's worth it. Definitely worth it.
It's not one of those $10 discount Blu-rays. I think the one I ordered from Amazon, said and done with tax and everything, cost me like $22.
Yeah, I think mine was $17.99 before tax. I think.
So you got a better price than I'm almost sure mine was $20 plus tax when I got it.
Yeah, I think I was lucky. I pre-ordered it or something and got a good price. A good, a better price. But it's, again, I think it's totally worth it.
$22 well spent, though. I got no struggle with that price at all. I'm just letting people know, don't expect it, find it in a discount bin someplace.
Right. Absolutely. Have you grown to appreciate this episode more? Because, again, like, you seemed a little more lukewarm on it. Not quite cold, if you will, but a little more lukewarm.
No, I've definitely gained a lot more appreciation for the episode. I still don't know that this would have cracked my top 5 quite, but it certainly would have been a lot closer to the discussion this time around than it was when we did that episode, I think. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely gained appreciation for it. Still not quite on that. My personal, I get why everybody else loves it. I get why you all have it sitting that high. I take nothing away from that. But for me personally, it doesn't quite hit that personal elite level for me.
Okay. I like it because it makes me sad. And I like being sad.
That's horrible. Yeah, it's very horrible, but understandable.
Did you ever see the Doctor Who episode Blink?
I have never seen a frame of a Doctor Who episode in my life.
So you should watch Blink, because you actually don't even need to know Doctor Who to watch that episode, and it's the most famous episode ever, so you should watch it. And it just plays like a great horror movie. But anyway, at the very beginning of it, there's this line that always sticks with me, because the character's like walking around this old abandoned house, and she's like, I love coming here because it makes me sad. And her friend goes, sad? Why do you want to feel sad? And she said, well, sad is happy for deep people. And I'm like, that's how I feel whenever I watch something, just because I like feeling sad.
Curious. Yeah, I guess there is a certain depth that goes with sadness, depending on what the trigger for the sadness was.
Yeah. So I watch Heart of Ice because it makes me sad.
Yeah. I mean, getting a sadness trigger from like a movie or a TV show, I get that because of, the different gamut of emotions that you get from things. But if you're sad because of a life event, now you've got a problem on your hands. Well,
right. And hopefully you don't want to be sad from something going wrong in your life. That's a whole different thing.
Right.
But I like movies and TV that make me sad for some reason.
Anyway.
Moving on from Heart of Ice, the Emmy Award-winning episode from 1992, we eventually did get a sequel, and the sequel came in November of 1994. And it was called Deep Freeze. So Deep Freeze is the next episode on the Blu-ray, and it directly precedes SubZero. And so, again, this is a Bruce Timm and Paul Dini story. Tim did not direct it himself. It was directed by Kevin Altieri, but Tim and Dini worked on the story, and then Paul Dini wrote the script, and it is your Heart of Ice sequel a little over 2 years later. So Mr. Freeze is still cooling his heels in his cell.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah. And he spends his days longingly staring at the snow globe. What else are you going to do with your time? Read a book? No.
That sells Mighty Bear. So I mean,
stare at a snow globe. That he knows that snow globe by heart. Anyway, this crazy robot breaks him out. This robot that has ice powers. It breaks him out. But the strange thing is Victor Freeze doesn't seem to know this was coming for him and doesn't want to be rescued by this robot. But the robot shoves him in its belly, kind of like Bender from Futurama, which will often happen. And runs off with Mr. Freeze. And so Batman and Robin are watching the footage and they're like, well, this seems weird because he doesn't seem to want to be broken out, but here we are. And we find out that he's been broken out by a character named Grant Walker. And Grant
Who
Walker.
everybody knows. Famous Rogues Gallery member.
Grant Walker. Everybody. I mean, he's just like Ferris Boyle.
Hey, at least you remembered it that time.
It only took 10 times, but I eventually got it. Now I'm not going to remember Grant Walker to save my life. But our two favorite Batman Rogues Galleries are Ferris Boyle and Grant Walker. So on the next episode, we're just going to talk about all of our favorite stories starring them. And no one will listen to it. It'll be great.
Both of them.
We can say whatever we want. No one will ever download it. But anyway, so Grant Walker, he is an older man with a mustache who has built an empire on theme parks. And because he's getting older, he wants to prolong his life by getting frozen.
There's no parallel to actual rumors of life events in this whatsoever. I saw no correlation to it at all.
No. Any similarities to actual people living or dead are purely coincidental. So he's the one who broke out Mr. Freeze. And with these robots that he has because of his theme parks. And he's like, hey, Mr. Freeze, I got a deal for you. You help me live forever like you. You freeze me. And guess what? Guess what I got behind door number 3? Behind door number 1's a brand new car. Behind door number 2 is a all expenses paid trip to Aruba. And under door number 3 is your dead wife.
Ice people in Aruba. That's an episode I need.
Yeah, that's the rejected third episode in the saga.
I see.
Is Mr. Freeze's Aruba vacation. He hates it. Spoilers. He doesn't like it at all.
I got the worst sunburn I ever got in my life in Aruba, so I can empathize with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather go to Kokomo.
Kokomo, Indiana? Yeah, you'll never get sunburn there.
Anyway, so it turns out Nora Freeze did not die. So this is when we find out that she was still alive and frozen. Again, I could have swore we learned it last time, but no, you learned it this time. So Grant Walker was they come up with some BS excuses. He was he was one of the investors in Goth Corp, including Freeze's research, because he wants to get frozen someday. And so he was helping fund that research through Goth Corp. And so when everything went down, he was able to swoop in and grab Nora Freeze and keep her alive without anyone else knowing about it. Works for me. You do what you got to do. A little retcon. And so Nora Freeze is still alive. And so he says, hey, we can cure her. All you got to do is this one favor, make me like you. And so Batman and Robin start doing their investigating. They realize that there's robots involved, and so they go see this robot expert, where we get some fun little cameos. Jamie?
From the Batmite?
We get Batmite, but there were more.
Oh, did I miss something?
Yeah, so after the Batmite robot shorts out, he throws it into a toy chest, and next to that toy chest were robots of Crypto the Superdog.
Oh, I missed that completely.
Mixel Spitlick. And if you say it a different way, don't at me. I don't care. You know who I'm talking
heard it
about.
19 different ways. I go with the one I heard in Superman the Animated Series, and he always said Mix's Pitlick, so that's how I say it now.
Close enough, right?
Yeah.
And then Supergirl's cat, whose name I don't know. I'm sorry, Rebecca Johnson. But Supergirl has a little orange cat with a cape, but it's sitting there by the toy chest too.
I completely missed all that. Though I didn't.
Were you on your phone? What were you doing?
I was probably yelling at my kids because I do that a lot.
Streaky the Super Cat?
That sounds right.
Huh.
I don't know if it is, but that sounds right.
According to the Googles, it's Streaky the Super Cat. Okay. I would not have come up with that on my own.
We'll take that.
That's what they called me in college, was Streaky.
There was a brilliant comic. I think Tomasi and Gleason did either Superman or a Super Sons comic issue where it was all the Super Pets teaming up.
Ah.
That was great. So if you didn't read it, track it down. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, that scene was very reminiscent of Blade Runner, I'm sure intentionally. The only thing I meant to look up when I was done, and I got distracted because the dinner bell got rang, and I don't Miss Meals. I don't know if that was the guy voicing that character that was the same one that played Sebastian in Blade Runner or not, because it kind of sounded like him.
Oh, geez. Which one? Who he was playing?
The guy that had all the robots.
Oh, right. Well, let's see.
Fortunately, you have that magic box that can tell you information.
I don't even know who Sebastian is in Blade Runner. I've only seen Blade Runner once.
I know.
And I still haven't seen the second one.
It's really good.
I heard it is. I just know that it's long, and so I'm always like, oh, if I start it now, I'm going to fall asleep. I think it is. I think you are correct. But now I'm going to confirm. Yep.
William
sure
Sanderson.
enough. Yep, William Sanderson. He plays Dr. Carl Rossum. And he was set up in the Heart of Steel episodes, and then they brought him back here for Deep Freeze. But yeah, you're right. Same actor. Nice. Well done, Jamie. I had no idea.
Yay, I contributed something worthwhile today.
All right. Good night, everybody.
We're out.
Peace. So yeah, same character. I didn't even realize that was a recurring character. But now that I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that is the same guy. So
I somehow didn't realize it was a recurring character either, and I don't know if that's because of my poor memory or I just didn't catch it the first time around. But you definitely got that Blade Runner vibe as they went into that guy's office.
Yeah, well, the whatchamacallit, those robot ones are not my favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Heart of Steel.
I'm not sure they're anybody's, but we'll go.
Yeah, Heart of Steel, not my favorite. But yeah, the character comes back, and now he's not a bad guy, or he's not doing anything shady. He's just making robots for theme parks, as we do. So I did appreciate the entire theme park part of this episode, since it's my bag, baby.
Well, this guy, as he worked for Grant, what's his name, whatever. See, even now I'm going to do it. Thanks.
Grant Walker.
Grant Disney. Perfect. That's what I'm calling him from now on. He said that when he worked for that guy, and he used a term, and I immediately thought, well, that's a way to get around saying Imagineer, because he said something else.
He said Visioneer.
Visioneer, thank you.
And I'm watching this with my morning coffee, and even that part, Sam giggled. She's only half watching because she was doing her own thing, but when she heard Visioneer, she was like, Visioneer.
Yeah, it was not subtle how they worked around that.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. When I loved the idea that at a certain point, Paul Dini and Bruce Timm got together and they're like, hey, what if Walt Disney was frozen and wanted to destroy the population of the Earth for his utopia? What would that be like? I think we just got an episode.
Mine's blown now. I'm cooked. I'm over with.
Because he's living in this utopian city of tomorrow, which is not to be confused with Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. It's like Oceania or something, but yeah, like
Oceania, yep,
something like that. Where so he built a theme park empire. He wants to be frozen to prolong his life. He looks just like Walt Disney.
No, I'm going to go back and rewatch it so I can see if there's a people mover going on in the background or something.
Yeah, I like the idea though. Like, hey, since it's Walt Disney, what if the animatronics were doing his bidding? And so now he's got this army of robots.
Well, I'm never going on Pirates of the Caribbean or Small World again. Thanks a lot.
But maybe they might break you out of prison someday. You don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
As long as he needs you.
They're not stuffing me in their belly, though. I don't care if they do look like Bender.
So anyway, Mr. Freeze is like, sure, I'm going to help you because you're going to save my wife. And then Batman and Robin, because this one is Robin. Robin wasn't involved in Heart of Ice. They figure out that Grant Walker is up to what he's up to.
That's never gonna not be funny.
And so they're off to Epcot, Oceania, and are going to stop him and foil his dastardly plans. Because we find out that is his plan. Is he's like, oh, everybody who lives in my little utopia is safe, and we're gonna go ahead and freeze the rest of the world to cleanse it, and then the world will be a better place. So it's the dark side of Disney. Because Disney wanted to build a futuristic city that was a utopia, but part of his plan that I know of was not murdering the rest of the world.
Well,
think
that's not the part they want to share when you're doing the tours and such. But.
It wasn't an orientation. That part they left out. So yeah, and then
well, seeing as how they're acquiring every film studio and everything else, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's its own thing. Someday they're going to acquire Warner Brothers and they're going to ban this episode forever.
Bastards.
And it's going to become the long lost episode of Batman the Animated Series.
We're going to have to go underground to broadcast.
But Freeze does what he asks. He turns Grant into Mr. Freeze 2. And so now you got 2 Mr. Freezes running around, and then Batman and Robin, they appeal to Mr. Freeze's the better part of his soul, being like, hey, we know that you'll do anything for Nora, but do you really think when Nora wakes up, she's going to be proud of what you did and what you helped this guy do? And it works. And so Mr. Freeze takes out Walker, and Walker enjoys this amazing fate of now he is somewhat immortal, but sinking to the bottom of the ocean in a chunk of ice. But I think he'll probably starve to death. I don't know if Mr. Freeze eats. They don't ever really cover that. So if he needs to eat, then he's not going to live forever.
Wasn't he catching fish in SubZero?
It's true. But was that just for Nanook?
Maybe it might have been. I don't know.
I don't know. But
I mean, if he's constantly that cold, one would think his metabolism is way down. So
right.
Obviously, I would imagine he has to eat at some point, but maybe not as much as the rest of us.
I mean, he's got to enjoy ice cream at the very least.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, Walker's like sunk to the bottom of the ocean. They imply that yes, he's gonna spend eternity miserably frozen in this block of ice. Again, if he has to eat, it won't last that long. And Mr. Freeze stays behind in this collapsing utopia with Nora because he refuses to leave her. And I love the moment when Batman and Robin, they're like, you've got to come with us, save yourself. And he's like, I'm not going to. And they're like, you need to come. And he was going to make him come. And Mr. Freeze's solution is to freeze Robin because now it's like, no, Batman, now you've got to save him. Just leave me be. I thought that was a great moment. I love that.
It is great, except for Batman's resolution to it of putting his cape over Robin to keep him warm. Thinking you're going to need a little bit more than that there, Bruce.
It's better than the laser gun in Batman and Robin, the movie.
I've already forgotten that detail. Thank God.
Well, that's a solution in the movie, is a laser gun. But come to think of it, could that part of the movie have been stolen from this episode? Maybe.
Probably.
Because that's how Mr. Freeze gets away in the movie, is he freezes Robin and he goes, whatever, it's some terrible line about, you have a choice, capture the villain or save the bird boy, or something horrible. And
that was
that's how he gets
away.
away.
Schwarzenegger impression.
I'm really talented. I don't want to brag.
I hope your Nightwing reading for Everyone Loves the Dracos like that, actually.
I do it in that voice, actually.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it was a choice,
really
but I
looking
stand
forward to
by it. Yeah, it's really good. But anyway, now that I think about it, I'm like, wait, they could have stolen that moment for the movie. So yeah, Batman wraps him in his cape and with his love. He wraps him with both, and he cuddles him.
And no chicken soup this time. Otherwise, he could have solved it right then and there.
He saves his life with his man love. That's what he does. And to
the back to tank he goes.
Yeah, and so he goes back. Thank God Batman kept the Empire Strikes Back tank. Thank God, because you never know when he might need it. And Dick Grayson is saved. And is Mr. Freeze still alive? We don't know. And of course,
well, we do, but
we being Batman and Robin don't know. But then we, as the audience, find out that yes, he's there, still with Nora, to continue pining after her. And then when I saw that ending, I was like, oh, this actually dovetails very nicely into SubZero.
Absolutely.
So Deep Freeze, like I said, if I've seen it, it was probably only once because most of this was new to me. Or at least felt
I
new.
had no recollection of anything that went on in this episode, so I'm pretty sure this was the first time I saw it. If I had seen it before, I'd forgotten every detail about it, which would not be uncommon for me. But I'm 90% sure that was the first time I saw it.
So what'd you think?
I thought it had some moments to it. I really thought it was kind of flimsy up to the point where Freeze kind of gets that switch flipped by them guilt tripping him into what would Nora think about your plan and your actions and what's going on here. That to me is where the strength of the episode really came out, because it appealed to his motivations that he's had right along. And I know I keep going back to this, but this is what works for me about this character in these episodes is the strength of that motivation and his love for his wife, because Batman hit him in the feels with that. And he realized, yes, my wife would absolutely be ashamed of this. She's not, a power hungry supervillain person. So she's not going to approve of any of what I did. So now I've got to backtrack on what I've done for however many days or weeks he's been working on it and stop this guy from executing the plan of wiping out billions of people. And the bit with her reveal of being still alive, all I could think of when they showed him that is how much of a emotional punch that would have been if I did not know it was already coming. Like if I had watched this when it first aired and I didn't have any information as far as, I didn't have any more information than what the characters had in the show. Like at the end of Heart of Ice, we assume she's dead. We don't know any better. And then this episode comes around and she's not dead. So I wonder what kind of emotional punch that would have carried that might have kind of ignited a fire under me for the episode a little bit sooner than what I got.
Right.
But as it is, I knew she survived, so it just didn't carry that punch for me like it would for that character.
Of course, yeah. And I think that it makes sense from a story standpoint to being like, we talked about a little bit in SubZero about how they have to keep finding a reason for Mr. Freeze to go back to being Mr. Freeze, because that's not what he wants. That's not really what he's into. And so you have to keep giving him a motivation to be a foil for Batman again. And so to bring Nora and put her back on the playing field as a piece, I think was really smart. And at the time, like the retcon they gave it made it work, because yes, as long as she's alive, now you've got story possibilities of things that can drive Mr. Freeze. Because prior to that, he seemed to have accepted his fate of like living the rest of his life in Arkham. His wife is dead, and so it's just him waiting for eternity with her memory. But once you find out she's still around, you go, okay, well now we've got some fertile ground to write new Mr. Freeze stories. So I like it. It makes sense. Again, we assumed that was always the case, but it's interesting to look back and realize that no, it was a decision they made to bring him back. The whole evil Walt Disney thing, I really like. It's a weird approach. It's an unexpected approach, but being a big Disney fan and being someone who, worked at Disney for many years, I thought it was a really entertaining way to tell the story and a very interesting inspiration to use for the story, especially because it's, again, Mr. Freeze being manipulated. So he's not out there being bad just to be bad. He's being manipulated by someone to get what they want, and then that puts him in the path of Batman. Much like SubZero, even Heart of Ice, and in Heart of Ice he says it, this has nothing to do with you, Batman. This is not, this is between me and GothCorp, or between me and Ferris Bueller. But like, if you keep putting yourself in my way, I have no choice but to take you out too. Same thing here. Like, Mr. Freeze is never about I've got to kill Batman. He has other things going on, and I think that's the case here too. I think that the robots are a little goofy for me. That's the part where I'm like, okay, it's a cartoon, I get it.
The helicopter robots I thought were a bridge too far.
Yeah, like they kind of looked like Hordak's robots in She-Ra.
I'm laughing because I actually got that reference. I'm going to call him Freezer because Bender's cousin's name would be Freezer.
Right.
I thought he was pretty cool. I thought that design was nice, and big hulking monster kind of things as always appeal to me. Just those helicopter robots were just no. I was good without those.
Yeah, they were, like I said, they were a little goofy. But it's also why, like, Heart of Steel is not my favorite. Is like Batman versus robots. For me, not my favorite angle to take. And same thing here, because it was a lot of robot stuff. The robots didn't quite work for me, but the idea of this super powerful guy trying to use Mr. Freeze to gain immortality and leveraging his wife to do it, that part I really like.
Right. The one thing prior to me really getting that gear shifted toward the end of the episode that really stood out for me was this guy telling Freeze he so desperately wanted to be like him and be immortal and all this other stuff. And Freeze, I forget the exact terminology he uses, but he basically caps it off by saying, I would trade all of that for your worst day.
Yeah. That's a good
thought
call.
that carried a lot of emotional heft to it.
Right. Yeah, I love that, the way he was like, you think you want this, but you don't even know what you're agreeing to. And so, yeah, he said, whatever, I'd trade thousands of years like this for your worst day. Good call. All right. Any other things about Deep Freeze you wanted to bring up?
No. I mean, you already mentioned the thing about how beautifully this led into SubZero, more or less. So, I mean, that's where I was going to cap it off. So I'm good.
Yeah, it does. It's a great little bridge to SubZero, which then does come next chronologically.
Right. And then it's easy to see why these episodes were included on this Blu-ray now. At first, I just thought they were, more or less filler. They just threw in stuff they could find with Mr. Freeze, and that was that. But now, after watching these two, so closely behind watching SubZero again, I get it. I completely understand why they did it this way. This Blu-ray is basically the Freeze saga, which I think you mentioned last time, not this time. So,
yeah, and I love that about it. One of the listeners tweeted when we posted last week's episode and basically said, as far as I'm concerned, the Mr. Freeze story ends with SubZero, and I tend to agree. I like this little trilogy of Heart of Ice, Deep Freeze, and then SubZero. I think it's a great arc and story for Mr. Freeze. But again, they couldn't leave well enough alone. They had to keep finding ways to bring him back, and so they couldn't let him have that happy ending at the end of SubZero. But I think that, yeah, as far as the best Mr. Freeze story, it is a good idea to just kind of go, okay, these three, and then Mr. Freeze walks off into the sunset knowing that Nora lives to freeze another day.
He wound up with the happiest ending he could get with that. Now, these other two episodes that are on here from the, what is it, Cold Comfort or something like that, and then the one from Batman Beyond, I haven't seen either of those. So I'm interested to carry into them eventually and see what they have to say in addition to it. Because as I look at this character, at first it seems strange to me that, they went over 2 years without bringing him back. And then I'm thinking of one side of it, that just shows how strong Batman's rogues gallery is, that you can go over 2 years without bringing back this character that clearly was immensely popular for that episode of Heart of Ice. But the other side of that is it's tough to write him unless you're going to make him just another crazed psychopath with, a freeze gun in his hand. Because there's only so much you can do to keep the motivation going, especially as we know Nora has been cured now and she's healthy and safe, presumably, unless something else happens to her, and that's why he comes back. But again, I haven't seen the other two, so I don't know. But
well, it'll be fun to get you to watch them. But yeah, it's like I said, they had to find ways to keep him on the board, and so they couldn't leave his happy ending happy. It'll be interesting to see what your reactions to those are when we do watch them. But for now, we did SubZero, we did the 2 prequel episodes, so the first 3/5 of the Mr. Freeze saga.
There we go.
And why don't we give some closing thoughts and some letter grades for these 2 episodes, Jamie?
Okay. I can basically sum it up for both of them by saying, again, the appreciation I've gained for this character in the last couple of weeks watching the movie and these episodes, I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I've gotten further appreciation. I've always liked Mr. Freeze, but he's always been more of a background type villain for me versus kind of at the forefront. Like I recognize him from the 60s TV show and from the animated series. I've read a couple of comics with him in it, but it always kind of ran with the other Freeze villains for me. Like I have a hard time differentiating, or I used to until I got back into reading really heavily, like Mr. Freeze, Captain Cold, Icicle Jr. I mean, there's like 19 different Freeze villains in the DC universe, and there's not much that separates them all other than their names and their costumes. Mm-hmm. But now I've gotten so much more appreciation that I can have that separation. So now I'd like to see somebody really put a strong arc for him in the comics. Like, to my knowledge and my recollection, and I read so much of it, it's hard to keep track. Scott Snyder brought Mr. Freeze in for a brief bit in All-Star Batman, and that just kind of fizzled out as quick as it came, I think. So that I'd like to see something else a little bit stronger put in the mix, not written by Tom King preferably. As far as letter grades, I think Heart of Ice is probably in the A- to A range for me, and then I think that the what's the name of the other one again? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Deep Freeze.
Deep Freeze, thank you. I'm thinking more that's kind of the B plus-ish range for me.
All right, nice. Yeah, and Scott Snyder also did a Batman annual that was all about Mr. Freeze. And it was essentially rethinking his origin story yet again, building off of Heart of Ice, but also tweaking it a bit, if you will.
Was this in Rebirth?
It was pre-Rebirth.
Okay.
It was New 52.
Okay, I did not read that then.
Yeah, and I really loved it. So I would say dig that up. It was one of the Batman annuals from when Scott Snyder was on the book, and it's Mr. Freeze, and it's great. It was interesting. He made some interesting choices with Mr. Freeze's origin, but I was okay with it. I thought it was creative. But yeah, dig that up if you're interested.
It was a tragic Ben and Jerry's shop accident, wasn't it?
It was. He turns out he got dumped by Nora, and in his sadness, he gorged on ice cream while watching sad movies at home, and suffered ice cream poisoning, which is why he can now only survive in sub-zero temperatures.
Look, we've all been hip deep into a can of Chubby Hubby, so I mean, we know how this can happen. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, and he bleeds Rocky Road now.
Oh, tragedy.
So,
sweet tragedy.
It was a unique take, but I don't hate it. And I think the story was called Victor Freeze and the 31 Flavors.
And again, somehow one of your podcasts is brought back to Baskin Robbins, and I blame Michael Lyons firmly for this.
Yeah, it's all Michael Lyons. Anyway, yes, I mean, I love the character of Mr. Freeze. I really love the version that we got in the animated series, especially because of Heart of Ice. And then I liked the sequel. It's not as good as the first. That's what usually happens with sequels, but I still thought it was really strong, and I liked the way that it pushed forward his character. So it's a great 1-2 punch of these two episodes. For me, Heart of Ice, yeah, it's the best of the best. It's an A+ for me. And then Deep Freeze is still really strong, though not quite to the level of Heart of Ice, but I'd say it's a B+. So I really love that they're on this Blu-ray with the movie, because then you can have the entire saga all in one place, and then when we have the time, maybe next week, maybe shortly after, we will do the other two, because it'll be interesting to hear Jamie's reactions to where they take the story of Victor Freeze from here. Brendan did spoil a bit of it for you on the last episode.
I don't listen to anything he says. Don't worry about that.
Well, that's why I threw the boomerang at him.
Oh, so you were the cause of the injury.
I can throw really far.
That's
from
a hell of an arm,
California to Australia. But anyway, there you go. Heart of Ice and Deep Freeze, two really great Mr. Freeze stories, thanks to Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. So we thank them for that, and we thank all of you out there for whenever you send us questions and thoughts in the Wayne Manor mailbox. So that's what time it is. It's time to crack open the Wayne Manor mailbox.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. The mail's here.
Now, that intro for the Wayne Manor Mailbox came courtesy of Rob Orff. Rob, thank you so much for sending that in, and I can't speak for Jamie, but I liked it.
It had Dark Knight music in it. Of course I liked it.
It was good. Good. Well done, Rob. Did you... I don't know if I've said it ever out loud on this show, but I really like the beginning of that intro because I like where that came from.
Okay. That reference was by me, so tell me, where did that came from?
That came from Blue's Clues.
Really?
Yep.
I have to go out and ask now, why do you know that?
Blue's Clues was something of a guilty pleasure of mine in college.
You don't say.
Yeah.
My kids watched it all the time, and I always made it a point never to be in the room.
I found it very soothing and entertaining. I liked Blue's Clues.
All right.
So, bonus points, Rob. I don't know if you knew that I liked Blue's Clues or you just felt it, but I love the combination of Blue's Clues and music. I think that was Batman Begins, but it could have been Dark Knight.
When I say Dark Knight, I mean Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, that's...
Right. The combo Blue's Clues and Batman Begins, well done, Rob. Thank you for that. So there you go. Yet another entry to the Wayne Manor Mailbox competition. We are going to eventually play them all, and then Jamie and I are going to choose a winner. So thank you, Rob. You are in the running. Well done. Can't wait to hear the next one. Now let's actually read your emails. So here we go. This email here comes from Todd Johnson. It says, thank you for doing SubZero. Mr. Freeze is my favorite villain, and SubZero is one of my favorites ever. I own it digitally, and when I heard the Blu-ray was coming out, I was on the fence about buying it because I watch it on the regular. Now that I know it has all the Mr. Freeze episodes as extras, it's a must-have. Thanks for the heads up, guys. This is my favorite version of Mr. Freeze, which made me wonder if you guys have ever done a Rogues Gallery show where you pick your favorite versions of the character in any media. I'd love to hear it. If you have, let me know the episode number. Keep up the great work. You're the best. Biggest fan, Odd Todd. Well, Odd Todd, if you liked that episode, you're going to like this episode too, because you're getting double dose of Mr. Freeze with these two.
Yeah, this should be right up his alley.
It should. So we did do an episode where we just argued the different villains amongst themselves, but we didn't necessarily talk about our favorite versions of villains. So that is something we could talk about doing.
I'd like a redo of that villain tournament anyway, because I'm not sure that it landed where it should have. That's just me being bitter and petty.
Still not over it, huh?
Nope, I'm still not over it. I may never be over that.
That's not on you. That's on Leroy. He's the one who argued in that final bracket.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
So,
yeah.
Take it up with him. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like the idea of talking about like our favorite versions of, say, Joker or Riddler or Mr. Freeze or whatever. That's a fun idea, Todd. I like it. Hope you picked up the Blu-ray. Hope you dug it. Thank you for writing in. Next message here is from Andrew Haskell. It says, hey, Holy BatCast family, I hope all is well. Will we see Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Batman and Lauren Cohan as the Joker in the DC films? Andrew, thank you for the message. What do you think, Jamie? You think we're ever going to see this?
I think there might have been a better chance before these. Oh gosh, I don't even know how I want to phrase this. I think we had a better chance before the. I mean, for lack of something better to call it, and I hate using this word, but I mean, it is what it is. The disaster that Justice League wound up being. Mm-hmm. For the studio. I don't feel like the movie was a disaster personally, but as far as the financial success and the critical success or lack thereof for the studio, I don't see it happen. I know Flashpoint's been a lot of talk with the Flash movie. I still don't see any way that they do that, and if they do it, it probably is going to be in name only. So as much as I'd love to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan turn that in, because I think he'd be magnificent for that part, and I think Lauren Cohen would probably be really solid as well. I just don't see it happening. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that before Zack Snyder stepped away from the DC films, the odds were really good of it. And I agree, Jeffrey Dean Morgan is too perfect for Thomas Wayne Batman, so I think he would be amazing. And I agree with you, Lauren Cohen's great as well. I think it would have been awesome. But now that things have changed, I do feel like the Flash solo film is going to back off of Flashpoint. And because of that, I think now odds are we will not see this happen, which will always be one of those what ifs. We never know. The Flash movie is still up in the air, so maybe they will do it. But yeah, if I were putting money on it, my guess would be no.
I would say at this point, the very best you could hope for would be some sort of a cameo appearance. But even that, I think, is really slim.
Yeah, I think at this point, I would agree. But we will see. Next message here is from Timothy Christensen. It says, hey guys, Batman No Man's Land, the audiobook is almost 10 hours long and it's amazing. I just finished it at work and started it over shoveling snow on Easter Sunday. Eric from last week's emails was looking for a suggestion. This one is really good and you guys should check it out too. I love the show, always looking forward to new episodes. Timothy, thank you so much for chiming in. And yeah, last week we did get an email about audiobooks or audio comics, and we were not much help. So thank you for writing that in. So for Eric, who wrote last time, there you go. There's another suggestion, No Man's Land.
Have you ever read No Man's Land?
I have not. Okay. I have like volume 1 in my Comixology, but No Man's Land is like this really massive, overwhelming thing. And so that's why I haven't, because it's not like I can just buy one volume. It's like tons and tons of volumes to get the whole story. So I'm kind of intimidated.
That was exactly my sticking point. I think I have the first 2, maybe 3 volumes of it. But here's the thing. That story as a whole makes Nightfall look like the famous Jewish sports legends pamphlet from Airplane. It's massive.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't like the story. It's just at some point I had to read other things, and that was monopolizing all of my reading time. What I would say for those that have the time to get more involved in it, our friend of the show and personal friend Guy Milks says there is a novelization of the story as well, like a straight novel, not a graphic novel, but an actual like all words, no pictures novel. And he said that it somehow or another, it just gets to the point much better than what the story did. And he likes the illustrated story as well. He just thinks that the novel drives the point home better somehow. So for anybody interested in that, there's apparently a novel, which might be what the audiobook is based off of, I assume.
That makes sense.
I can't imagine an audiobook of a comic works quite as well.
Right. Yeah, one of these days I will tackle it. I just have not yet.
Yeah, I liked what I read. It's just, it's too much involvement. It's a huge commitment to get into that. It really is.
And I think that was it. Is I was like, oh, good, like they're on sale. I'll buy it. It's probably a volume or 2, and it's not. It's tons.
It's like 4 or 5 volumes, and we're not talking about 6-issue volumes. We're talking about like 12, 14, 16 issue volumes. They're the great big thick suckers.
Right. So one of these days. Next email here is from Mark Jurasevic. It says, hey, Andy and Jamie, I always love listening to you guys. I have just finished Young Justice Season 1 and 2 on Netflix with my 2 young children, and we absolutely loved it. One of the best animated series ever. One of the great things about it was how they made Season 1 and 2 so different, yet still connected. Season 3 still has a slight edge in my opinion. What are your overall thoughts of the series and your hopes for Season 3? Take bat care. Regards, Mark. Mark, thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for writing in. Jamie, thoughts on Young Justice as well as upcoming Season 3?
Young Justice is a very popular thing in my household. My children have accumulated as many books as they could find on the matter. I finished Season 2 without them, and I caught the fury of hellfire from them for watching it without them. So yeah, it's a very popular, very well-liked, well thought of show for us. And I hope they make a Season 3 someday, but I still haven't seen a trailer, so I don't believe Season 3 is coming yet.
We have seen costume designs.
I said trailer. I said I will not believe it until I see a trailer, and I stand firm by that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I had been screaming praise for Young Justice from the mountaintops ever since it came out. If you go back and listen to this show, I've been trying to force it down everyone's throat for years now, because I do think Young Justice is truly one of the best animated series ever. I do hold it in the same level of esteem as Batman the Animated Series and Justice League. I think it is that good. It's a great series. I agree with you. I think that they took a really big chance of how they leapt forward with season 2 and really switched it up, but I love that they did that, and it appears that they're going to do the same thing for season 3. I trust the team doing it because I have nothing but love for seasons 1 and 2, so I'm going to go with them as to where their plan is for season 3. I can't wait to see more too. I do think that we will see more probably in July, Comic-Con, because that's where we saw the first designs last year, and they've got to start ramping up for the launch of the streaming service, and this is one of the big selling points. So I can't wait for that trailer so that way Jamie can finally admit that it's real.
When I see the trailer, then I'll concede. But until then,
but it's one of those things. I'm just so happy that we are getting a season 3 because of how much I love the first 2 seasons.
God, how great are Black Manta, Deathstroke, and Calder in that show?
Very great.
Yeah.
Of all the,
they're all. I don't remember a character I don't like in the show, but those 3 particularly stand out for me.
Yeah. Well, and the show made me fall in love with Calder. And I'm so glad that Calder is finally like in the real comics continuity because they invented him for that show and he's such a great character. But yeah, that show did so many great things with so many great characters, including those that you mentioned. But I mean, they did great things with Robin. They did great things with Nightwing. They did some awesome stuff with Flash.
Batgirl.
It's an awesome show. Batgirl, yeah.
Brief, but really
such a good show
for her anyway. I love that episode.
I never thought I would give a crap about Artemis, and she's great.
Yeah.
So it's such a good show.
Thanks. I know what I'm watching when we get off here tonight.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right. Next message here is from our pal, Philip Barker. It says, Dear Andy, Jamie, and Brendan. Sorry, Philip. Brendan's not doing so well. I'm so sorry. But we're here. He says, the latest episode of Holy BatCast was very telling and a wonderful listen all around. When I was around 6 or so, one Easter morning, I woke up to the VHS copy of Batman and Mr. Freeze SubZero. So to listen to an episode centered around that movie on Easter was actually quite refreshing. Everything you guys brought up about the film was spot on. It was like turning back the clock and being 6 all over again revisiting the movie. For that joy alone, I can never thank you guys enough. I guess if I had any kind of questions to be answered, this would be the place to ask, so I will. Is there a chance to see Mr. Freeze in a movie again? Or if there was a chance to see Mr. Freeze in a movie again, how would you approach it? I think working the humanity angle between Batman and Victor is always a strong thread to go on. Both characters deal with loss in similar but different ways. Not to mention, it's about damn time we got another Batman Christmas movie. Keep up the great work, guys. Much love from another Bat brother, Philip Barker. Philip, happy Easter. I love that your memories of SubZero are around Easter. So yeah, we planned that episode just for you. And so I'm glad you appreciate it. That was just for you. But yeah, I mean, really glad that we were able to bring back those memories for you. But as far as if Mr. Freeze were to show up in another movie, which I hope to God he does, because much like I want Riddler to get another chance, I want Mr. Freeze to get another chance as well. How would we approach it, Jamie?
I'd like to say some sort of a rounded adaptation of Heart of Ice or what we've been talking about here, but since obviously Batman and Robin borrowed so much from that, and I would think if they are ever going to bring Mr. Freeze back to the big screen, they're going to want to distance the hell out of themselves from Batman and Robin. They might have to go with something like the Ben and Jerry's tragedy in order to make it work.
I mean, I think that you can still tell the Mr. Freeze story with the Nora backstory. You just got to find a new goal for him to have. It can't just be a retelling of Heart of Ice, and it certainly can't be a retelling of Batman and Robin. But I think you can keep the origin and the motivation intact, but just find a new way for him, to get into Batman's way. I think that SubZero did that great. The idea of using Barbara Gordon to save Nora, and then that immediately created conflict with Batman, something like that, whatever that might be. But yeah, I mean, I think more important than what the story is, I just want the portrayal of the character to be very true to what we saw, especially in the animated series, because we talked about how that is, or at least for me, that's my favorite version of Mr. Freeze. I think it's the right balance of sci-fi, but plausible, and taking advantage of the ice theme of the character, but without going over the top. Like, there's a nice balance there. I think that's your template for putting him in a movie. I would love to see it happen. And if it's at Christmas, hell yeah, count me in.
Yeah, I was going to say you sold a ticket just on that premise alone.
It's that easy. All right, one last message here is from Brent Ellenberg. It says, hey guys, great episode on SubZero, and Brendan, don't feel bad. I don't have this on Blu-ray either, although I do have the option. Sorry, guess that sounded like I was taking a shot. JK. Andy, I'm a score guy like you. I wanted you to know that while I know you have not played the Arkham games, you should really check out the scores. They're great. I think you can actually get 2 of the 3 on Amazon Prime for free with Prime Music. Now to Jamie, I've got a comic question or beef. I continue to be let down by not having Batman and Robin working together on a regular basis unless they do it in Super Sons. I don't have time to read that. But this is an issue we have faced for some time. The Bat family is nice, but I would love to see more Batman and Robin. I feel that Tom King, in his book anyway, is more concerned with writing love stories than Batman stories. Just my thought. I still love the books, but I feel like every issue we're seeing King make Batman look weak. It's almost as bad as Super Heavy. Sorry if you like that run. It's nice for an issue or 2, but after that, I'm ready for Batman stories. Thanks again for all the great work. Brent Ellenberg, thank you for the message. About the scores, I have heard that the Arkham game scores are great, and so yeah, I appreciate the recommendation. I'll check them out, because as I mentioned on the last episode, my Batman playlist definitely needs more music. Yeah,
it's really short.
I want to get it past the 2-day mark. So thank you for that. As far as the comics, yeah, interesting points here, Jamie. I'm going to let you tackle them first.
I certainly won't contest the idea that he is. First things first. The Batman and Robin thing. I don't know why it didn't register with me until he just mentioned it, because that does seem like a pretty important dynamic. If you'll excuse the semi-pun, blame Tim Rooney for that again. There probably should be a little bit more of a Batman and Robin focused book floating around there somewhere. I mean, obviously, Batman can carry 3, 4, 5 titles at one time, so one of them should probably be centric on the dynamic duo aspect of it. So yeah, I'd be on board for that, because once in a while you get a little bit of it in Super Sons. There was a little bit in the main Superman book right before Super Sons got launched. There was some Batman and Robin and Superman and Superboy stuff going on. Detective is really the closest thing we've got, and obviously Tim was missing for a good portion of that run that's going on since Rebirth. And now that he's back, there's kind of a divide amongst the Bat family, so you're still not getting a lot of that Batman Robin centric stuff. So yeah, I'm with you. I'd like to see a little bit more of that, even if it's Damian instead of Tim, or switching off between different Robins. I mean, any of that would be okay with me. I mean, I've become somewhat of a Damian fan, so I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. As far as the Tom King thing, look, man, I spent hours today on Twitter and Facebook talking about Batman number 44. And for anybody who hasn't read Batman 44, it's basically Catwoman looking for her dress in a way that old Catwoman would look for her dress. Not how somebody getting married to a billionaire that has unlimited access to fundage and everything else would do it, or like a normal person would do it. She pulls a straight cat burglar thing for a wedding dress. Anyway, that's getting into spoilers. I hated this issue. I mean, I despised this issue. I can't stand the sight of. Look, my pages were. You ever get one of those comics where the pages are like they're not cut quite right, so you have to kind of tear the pages to be able to separate them so you can read it? You ever have that?
Yeah.
This book was like that. Normally, I'd go back to the shop and say, "Hey, man, can you help me out and just trade me a copy of this?" And he does it with zero resistance. This book, I don't even care enough to do it. I don't care that I had to tear the pages to get it open, because I couldn't wait to get this book off my friggin' table. I hated it so much.
I love this email though that Brent sent, because he was so succinct with what's going on with Tom King, as he wants to write love stories, not Batman stories. And I was like, man, I think you nailed it.
But see, the weird thing about it is he's doing almost the same thing with Mr. Miracle. And you're not reading that, are you?
No.
Okay. Well, the last issue of Mr. Miracle was Big Barda went into labor and they were going to have their baby, which seems like a really weird premise for a comic book dealing with the New Gods. But this was a great book. I mean, all credit in the world to Tom King. It's the best thing I've ever read from him by far, bar none. And it was probably one of the best books I read in the last month. It was magnificent. Anybody who's ever gone through the childbirth process with their significant other, or, you know, if you're the female carrying the baby, I mean, it was a strong book that just amazing. The emotional weight worked so well. And for whatever reason, I know Tom King's good at that because I've read it through 7 issues of Mr. Miracle now. I have not felt that way about any of the stuff with Batman. And part of that's probably because I don't really care for the whole Bat-Cat dynamic. And I can't believe I just said Bat-Cat because, oh God, it just hurts me saying it. But I don't like the way it's being written. I don't like the character beats for the most part. I mean, there's bits here and there that I appreciate, but as a whole, I don't like it. It's not what I want. And I kind of let it go more or less because I know other people do like it, and you know, not everything can be written specifically for me, obviously. And I have so many other things that I can read that I'm appreciating now that I just kind of push it off. But I'm telling you, with every issue, especially getting closer and closer to this wedding, I find myself more and more just completely agitated by everything that's going on in that main Bat title right now. And I think he hit the nail on the head that he's writing. There's not really much Batman activity going on there, and the stuff that is, it's like flashback stuff, and I that's not what I want. It's not me.
No, I agree with you. And again, I think I like it a little more than you, but I'm not in love with it like some other folks are. But I think that's it, is because like since he's taken over, this hasn't been a book about Batman protecting Gotham from bad guys. It's just been an excuse to do a long-range soap opera between Bruce and Selina. It's like, and issue 44 was a perfect example. That was exactly what it was. I caught up right before we started recording, but that's exactly it. Like, the good thing, though, is it will make for a great movie starring Katherine Heigl. But yeah, like, he wants to write 50 Shades of Batcat. He doesn't want to write Batman going out and protecting Gotham and fighting bad guys. He has no interest in that. And it's like, well, I kind of want to see Batman go on adventures and fight bad guys and protect Gotham. That's kind of what I like about Batman. I don't really care about watching him plan a wedding. When I think about my favorite Batman stories, it's not like, hey, what wedding cake does he want? I don't give a shit. I want to see Batman going out being Batman.
It's just funny you say that because there's still, 6 more issues until the wedding? 5 more issues till the wedding? There's probably going to be a whole issue that deals with the cake. We just had one that dealt with the dress, so Lord knows there's going to be other things. It's just... Look,
yeah, for the people who it's working for, God bless you. Good for you. I'm glad. But yeah, for me, I'm like, I just want to see Batman going on adventures. Like, hey, do you remember when Batman used to fight supervillains in Gotham? Pepperidge Farm remembers, but Tom King doesn't.
Yeah. Look, I appreciate and respect the idea that he's doing something different that nobody else has taken the approach on. That's fine. I get it. And as Andy said, if it works for you, more power to you. I'm glad that it works for you. For me, I'm ready for something different now. I'm ready for this to go away and for something else to start. I've had enough.
Right. I hear you. I'm right there with you. I like that he is. I like that he wanted to explore Bruce and Selina's relationship. I like that, but I want that in context of Batman being Batman. I don't want it instead of Batman being Batman.
What was Rooftops? Wasn't that like 22 and 23 or 24 and 25? I mean, it was like 20 issues ago, and this is where we're at now. It just that's a year's worth of books for this.
Yeah.
I'm ready for something else.
Yeah. But I also thought it was an interesting point about you're not getting like a Batman and Robin dynamic anywhere. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's true, because there was a Batman and Robin book, but that did not survive the Rebirth era. So you're right. Like it's pretty much Bat Family in Detective, and then Batman soap opera in Batman. But you're not getting a Batman and Robin story anywhere. So that's an interesting point. I didn't think of it until he said it either.
Speaking of Batman and Robin, I'm just going to throw this in here. White Knight #7. Hell of a thing they did with Jason Todd there.
I still haven't read that.
Oh, it's so good, dude. I can't wait for that thing to hit trade so you can read it and we can talk about it because, man, that's been consistently my favorite Bat book for 7 straight months now.
All right. Cool. Anyway, thank you to Brent, and thank you to everybody who did write into the Wayne Manor mailbox. We do appreciate it. If you've got a question for us, you can send that to Holy BatCast at rf4rm.com. So please and thank you to everybody who did that. Also, thank you to everybody who has taken time out of their busy, busy lives to write us an iTunes review. If you have yet to do that, please, we really would appreciate it. We're still holding steady at like 243. We've not gotten a new one in a couple weeks, so if you've been waiting to do it, now's the time. Please and thank you for that as well. Again, it's really quick and easy, and it helps us get the word out about the show. So thank you for doing that. But that is where we're going to wrap up this episode of Holy BatCast. Jamie, always a pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely. Good times were had, and now that we're done talking about Mr. Freeze, I get to go back out into the world where it's actually freezing. So.
Would you say that this episode was also a cool party?
No, but I just somehow knew you were going to mix that in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you know what killed the Holy BatCast? The Ice Age! Anyway, where can the folks keep up with you online if they would like to?
You can send all your pro Tom King hate mail to me at my Twitter handle of BatRaider3960, or find me floating around various Real Fans groups on Facebook.
Great. So yeah, please give Jamie a follow. Please give the show a follow. I already told you where to find me at the beginning. So that is it. This is episode, I think, 153. We are making our way towards 200, Jamie. Thank you guys out there for downloading the show. Please do subscribe to the show on iTunes. That's the other quick and easy thing you can do to help support us. If you just click subscribe, that also helps other people find us. So please do that. And then as Michael Keaton's Batman says, I want you to tell all your friends about me. Also visit holybatcast.com and follow us all over social media on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, Holy BatCast. But that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for joining. We will see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Holy BatCast is brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. Remember, the thoughts and opinions shared by the participants are theirs and theirs alone, and do not represent the companies or organizations they happen to work for.
It would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed.